I did at our last session, and I want to review these, we talked about the elements of design. Every artist that becomes an artist uses these elements of design, and there's some extra ones too that we will go over at a later Art at Noon, Come Learn With Us segment. Line, horizontal, vertical, diagonal. Remember to look for line, shape, form, the color of a composition, the value, the lightness or the darkness of an image. Texture plays an important role in lots of pieces of art, as well as space. This is some of the things that we will put in your toolkit. So today, we're going to talk about symbolism. Art has long been a universal language, transcending time and culture to communicate profound ideas, emotions, and narratives. Beyond the surface of strokes and colors lies a world of hidden meanings and narratives and symbolism that enriches the viewer's understanding of that artwork. From the kind of smile of Mona Lisa to the surreal landscapes of Salvador Dali, famous paintings throughout history have employed symbolism as a powerful tool to convey messages that often transcends the canvas. Now, symbolism in art goes beyond just mere representation. It serves as a bridge between the artist's intentions and the audience's interpretation. And I think that's extremely important to kind of mull on as I talk. Artists use symbols to imbue their works with layers of significance that invite viewers to engage in a deeper dialogue with the piece. Now, these symbols can take the form of objects, colors, gestures, or even subtle details that might go unnoticed by a casual observer. Throughout history, artists have harnessed this power of symbolism to communicate extremely complex themes, political themes, personal stories, and also make a cultural commentary. This practice allows art to just transcend the visual nature, and it evokes an intellectual and emotional response to those that encourage it. So what we're going to do today is, okay, somebody needs to mute their, please mute your, please mute. Thank you.
Talking, and he said we need a place, and I had spare room.
Probably me.
Used, and I had it.
Okay, join us today as we're going to jump into this realm of symbolism in famous paintings. And I want to invite you on this journey with me through these iconic works of art while we're going to uncover some intricate meanings that's kind of woven in between them. From religious undertones of Renaissance masterpieces to a rebellious subtext of modern and contemporary artworks, we're going to explore how artists have cleverly used symbols to communicate messages that endure across generations. When we analyze symbols in these artworks, we not only gain a deeper appreciation for the artist's ingenuity, but we also unravel the historical and the cultural and the personal context for the artists that shaped these masterpieces. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to try to peel back the layers of paint and dive into this intricate world of symbolism. where art becomes a conduit for understanding that beautiful tapestry of human expression. And we know that at the core, symbolism is a practice of using specific elements such as objects, colors, animals, gestures to represent abstract ideas or emotions. But these symbols go beyond their literal representation and they carry additional layers of meaning. It's like a puzzle. When you put a puzzle together sometimes and you get those aha moments. And this invites all of us as viewers to try and decipher some of the artist's intended messages. Can we do it all? I mean, can it happen all at once? No, it doesn't. But if you know a little bit about what these symbols represent, and and sometimes they represent many things, it's you start to really enjoy looking and viewing art a little more. Let's take a look at the Mona Lisa. Her smile. The Mona Lisa smile has been shrouded in history for years and years and years. Let's analyze that. Leonardo da Vinci's portrait is a prime example of how symbolism can create intrigue and mystery. This expression, the smile achieved through the delicate use of light, very delicate use of light, is symbolic of a human emotion itself. It suggests that beneath the surface, there are layers of emotions and thoughts that remain concealed, much like the layers of paint that constitute the image. Perhaps this is the most famous painting in the world and portrait in the world, and it was created in the 16th century. High resolutions of these scans, which I find fascinating, they're finding out, of the painting have revealed that there are tiny letters and numbers in the Mona Lisa's eyes. The right eye, this one, contains the initials LV, perhaps signifying Leonardo da Vinci's own name, while the symbols in the left eye remain unidentified. Some people believe that the woman known as the Mona Lisa was a nun, Lisa, that was buried beneath a convent in Florence. Others speculate that the Mona Lisa was Leonardo da Vinci's mother, who was Katrina, who was possibly Chinese or a Middle Eastern slave. And because of the positioning of the body and the hands, once again, symbols and how she's positioned her hands, others think that she could have been a courtesan and perhaps pregnant. These symbols, people have been trying to unpack the symbols in the Mona Lisa ever since it was painted, I'm sure. Even this, if you will look over in this way, he has put winding roads, which may be the problems that we all face in life. He's outlined this figure in quite detailed, using of the light and the dark, which also enhances this painting's symbolism. Now, I want to pause briefly and say to all of you, this is a pretty long presentation. And if you need to take a potty break or need to go, or that is fine with us. You don't have to tell us you're leaving. You just have to generate and scoot on out, and it is fine with us. Hopefully, we can put this up so that you can review it. During the Renaissance, religious themes dominated the art world, and artists often used symbolism to convey spiritual concepts. This is Sandro Botticelli's The Birth of Venice, and it is a masterpiece. The seashell, let's get a big view of the seashell. The seashell upon which the goddess stands is symbolic of her birth from the sea foam, linking her to concepts of love, purity, and transformation. The symbol transcends the image of a beautiful woman and invites viewers to contemplate the divine aspects of femininity. All types of symbolism are in this one. We're not going to discuss one of these days. We'll discuss it, but I just wanted to make sure that you notice the seashell is a very prominent symbol of life, given life. One of my all-time favorites. This is the Netherlands painter Jan van Eyck, I think. And he is celebrated for his impressive oil paints because the medium's luminous glazing ability. And this brilliant color can be seen in this double portrait. And it was a work made mysterious thanks to its rich array of symbolic references. The painting depicts Giovanni, an Italian merchant in the Flemish city of Bruges, and his wife as they stand in their bedroom. The embrace of hands has been interpreted as indicating that this was intended to be a wedding portrait. And the wife's gathering of her skirt in the other hand has been said to allude to the hopeful pregnancy. Now, there is no proof of this. This is just interpretation. And once again, symbols, you can interpret symbols in many different ways. And everybody, art critics do have their own opinions. But what is certain, though, that Van Eyck wove into this bedroom vignette several intriguing symbols. For example, let's look at one of them. The dog. The dog who stands at their feet has been interpreted as a symbol of fidelity, while the ripe oranges that rest on the windowsill at left have been suggested as allusion to the couple's abundance, either fertile or financial. At the back of the room is perhaps one of Van Eyck's most striking inclusions. It's a convex mirror framed intricately with a carved wooden frame. Now, if you look closely at the frame, it reveals Van Eyck has he's meticulously rendered scenes from the Passion of Christ in that. But perhaps even more striking is the realization that this mirror reflects the artist himself standing at the same point of the viewer. They never had children, this couple. And she died, I believe, a year before this painting was invented, and perhaps had died in childbirth. But the symbols of marriage and fidelity, such as the single lit candle in the background, I believe it's over here somewhere. Yeah. The dog at the couple's feet contrast with symbols of death. And it's at the above her head, I believe these candles are extinguished above her head, adding layers of mystery to the portrayal. Really, this is a portrayal of life and death in art. The Old Fisherman, and I will just call his first name because he is a Hungarian artist, and I think it is Tivadar. This is the Old Fisherman. Now, when you look at this painting right at first, it's just a simple description of an old man, by the sea. However, if you get closer and you look at this painting closer, you will see that when the left side is mirrored, which is we're going to do right now, Let's look at the left side of this. You see the left side, the fisherman sits calmly in the boat praying. The scene emphasizes peace, faith, a connection with nature. The humble and devout fisherman reflects an inner peace and a spirituality. However, when you pull it over to the mirror side here, you see a completely different thing going on. There's a tumultuous sea contrasting sharply with that peaceful image on the other side. This, to the artist or to the visual, could represent the conflict between good and evil, a common thing. This is a common theme in this artist's work. The hidden images in The Old Man and the Sea exemplify how an artist can depict an entirely different story within the same painting, leaving the discovery to us, the viewers. Among real impressive works credited to the Northern Renaissance was Hans Holbein's younger. And this is The Ambassadors. Here is undoubtedly one of the most discussed, given his work, given its incredible use of symbolism. Holbein painted at the right George de Selva, a French, a French bishop and ambassador to Venice. And at the left, Jean de Vinta, a French ambassador to London. Their fashions reveal Holbein's taste for meticulous rendering of costume, but it is the array of objects spread on the table between the two men that really hooks the viewer. The lower shelf features a terrestrial globe with a psalm book, I believe right here, and a lute. Where the upper shelf is packed with navigational tools, a celestial globe. In sum, these objects have been variously interpreted by scholars. Some suggest a symbolic division between earthly and heavenly realms. Others note a contrast between the arts and the sciences. The clearest symbol here, though, is the unusual skull that sits at the center foreground of the composition. Rendered in perspective, meaning it comes into alignment only when viewed from a certain angle. The skull serves as a reminder of the inevitability of death. Allegorical paintings were all the rage at the time. That Bronzini's an allegory of Venus and Cupid, and it still stumps scholars today because of its challenging symbolic references. Also, it's known as Venus, Cupid, Folly, and Time. Bronzina's painting centers around the figures of Venus and Cupid, who awkwardly embrace upon a silken blue backdrop. A little giddy cherub. This one. He's a little giddy cherub over here. And there's a little giddy cherub approaches with handfuls of rose petals. He's looking like he's going to shower them. But a closer look at this painting reveals that chaos is coming. Wrapped around the cherub's foot, if you'll look closely, is a snake. Like tail of a creature of equal parts serpent and female. And if you'll notice, look how it goes, right up like this. So here she is. And the female that confrontedly turns to the viewer holding a segment of a honeycomb in one hand and what appears to a scorpion's barb in the other, above a frightened figure a frightened figure interpreted as time, thanks to his wings. Fights to hold up a silken cloth, as if to protect the scene from a frightening figure in the upper left, whose vacant eyes and partial head convey an ominous air. Adding to that intensity is the figure in the center left, who has, in his ashen tones, and seems to counter the joyous, all of this mirth, this fun that's going on initially. And he is kind of seen to perhaps be the subject of this painting. If this varied array of symbols has you stumped too, not to worry. It's not clear what sort of message the artist was trying to relay in his work. What it does seem to showcase, however, was that he was not afraid to push the idea of an allegorical image and stretch symbolism, really stretch it to its breaking point. American painter John Singer Sargent attracted a clientele of some of the wealthiest socialites of the generation, basically because of his ability to capture portraits that balanced perfection of his sitters with a sense of naturalism. And such is the case of this wonderful portrait of Madame X, which reveals Emilio Gateau, who was the American wife of a wealthy French banker. Known for her beauty, Virginie was sought by several artists, including Sargent, to sit for such portraits. She also had a reputation, however, for a rather scandalous social life, which set the stage for controversy when Sargent asked to paint her. Seemingly caught in a moment of quiet reflection, Virginie stands facing the viewer with her head in profile to accentuate her delicate features. The deep black satin of her dress offers a contrast to her pale flesh, and the subtle sparkle of the gown's gem-studded straps convey an overall air of elegance about her. It was the placement of these straps that resulted in the controversy of this painting, and it was a tremendous controversy. In the original version of the painting, Sargent composed the left strap of Virginie's dress as slipping off her shoulder. Today, this might not merit a second glance, but at the time, that such slippage would have been considered indecorous for a married woman, as it would have alluded to her promiscuity. So, when the painting debuted at the 1884 Paris Salon, the reaction was heated, and despite Sargent's effort to obscure Virginie's identity, her family objected to such a representation. Sargent later overpainted the work to correct the sagging strap so that they both appeared secured upon her shoulders. But the damage to her career was a major disappointment to Sargent, and he kept this painting in his studio into his death. Just the single symbol of a strap loosed over her arm. Now that gives you an introduction of some famous paintings and what several of their symbols meant and how people reacted to them. We're now going to talk about color and the symbolism of color and the important role that it plays in paintings. The symbolic interpretation of color used in this is a chart that gives you an idea of what types of emotions color can produce. And I want to talk about the color green for just a minute. I remember a friend of mine who worked in the prison system, And they were very much aware of what colors that they put on the walls in prison. And one of the ones that they used was a very, very light green. The chart gives you an example from of the opposites, from the positive to the negative, of what color can provide as emotions in paintings. In the old Byzantine, Gothic, and Renaissance paintings, we had gold was used as halos in purity and royalty. Blue would symbolize purity, the Virgin Mary, because blue was made was very uh, was very hard to come by and had to be ground. It was very expensive, the pigment blue, to make. So that's the reason, one of the reasons you see it used in the Madonnas. Purple symbolized Christ, His Majesty. Holy figures in Byzantine art, you'll see wrapped in purple robes and maybe even outlined in red. Red in Renaissance and Gothic and paintings was a symbol of greediness and lust. It denoted sin, the slaughter of the innocents, the apocalypse. It also denoted a power and authority. Green in the Renaissance and Gothic and Byzantine, when used, symbolized resurrection, baptism. It also represented peace and spring and renewal and new life. White was a sign of innocence, betrothal, marriage, the virgin child, the Immaculate Conception. And when you go to gray and black and the dark browns, that was a symbol in the Byzantine and the Gothic and the Renaissance paintings of atonement, crosses, crucifixes. And it could also be recognized as darkness and misdeeds and death and witchery. This, of course, is one of the other most famous paintings in the entire world, Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. And this shows you that how color has a powerful ability to evoke emotions and associations, making color an absolute potent tool in the artist's palette of symbols. This is a captivating example. The swirling blues, the yellows in the night sky are not mere depictions of a scene. They convey turbulence of the artist's own emotions and perhaps mental state. The stars themselves, that are hard to see it with this particular rendition on the computer, might be seen as symbols of hope or an unattainable dreams, while the dark cypress tree in the foreground could symbol death and mourning. It's often been suggested that Starry Night shows Van Gogh's emotion, especially in the way he paints the dimly lit sky as an expression of his battle to overcome disease and sickness. Through the painting, the artist displays a deep and purposeful relationship between the surroundings. His brushstroke conveys a certain mastery in expressing emotions, where the trees and the mountains and the hills and convey deep, dark recesses that really kind of threaten to envelop our souls. Earth and heaven in this particular painting are undoubtedly connected in his work. And the movement of the wind across the painting depicts the movement, perhaps, of our soul between life and the next. The Yellow Christ by Paul Gauguin is the famous crucifixion of Jesus Christ, depicted as if it was occurring in the 19th century. Look at these colors and look at the backgrounds and the clothing. All of these seem to symbol and be symbolic of different things. Certainly the yellow color depicts the isolated nature and the religious piety of the 19th century peasants, while the clothing of the subjects represent the regions from which they come from. City life is possibly undesirable, and the background splashed in those autumn reds and oranges maybe represent the desire of furthering oneself from the city. It's a symbolic piece. We see the women are gathered in prayer. He relies heavily, once again, if we look at the design elements that artists use, Gauguin relies heavily on bold lines to define his figures, and he reserves the shading only for the women. The autumn palette of yellow and red and green in the landscape echoes the dominant figure of Christ. Now let's just delve into surrealism and dreamscapes in the unconscious mind that are filled with symbolism. In the dream, Rousseau depicts a reclining nude woman in a very lush jungle setting. The dreamlike quality is evident in the exotic and otherworldly atmosphere of the painting. The jungle is vibrant with foliage and mysterious creatures, and this adds to the sense of this fantastic dream that is unfolding. Symbols in the painting include the strange appearance, and I'll see if I can find it, and it's just his tail of the snake, symbolizing perhaps temptation and danger. And the dreamer's has a very kind of a dreamlike quality on her face. You know, she's thinking about things. Rousseau's use of vivid colors, look at the colors he uses. They are vivid. The red, yellows, the deep, deep greens. These contributes to the dreamlike nature of the scene. You wouldn't think it would, but it does. The dream showcases how Rousseau drew inspiration from his dreams to create a rich and symbolic visual narrative. And we could not have a discussion about surrealism and dreams without looking at this painting. This is another probably worldwide famous painting. The Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali. This movement, Dali's movement, took symbolism to new heights, exploring, and what he was doing, he was exploring dreams and real life. That's what he was doing. If you look, just it's pretty basic, but that was it. In this particular painting that we are looking at, this really challenges our understanding of time and reality. The melting clocks draped over various objects symbolize the fluidity, and time does pass, flows, and also the instability of human perception. It's the painting is dreamlike, and it serves as a reminder that reality and consciousness are really subjective experiences. So that was our surrealism. Let's talk about political symbolism. Let's talk about art as the silent symbolic protest. And the wonderful quilt exhibit, and if you have not gone to the quilt exhibit at the Comer, I believe it ends pretty soon, if not this week, go, because you will see this symbolism, this artistic symbolism portrayed in several quilts as they move into the 21st century, quilting does. And it's used as a silent protest, especially with the quilts of the G women in Alabama. Art has been used as a platform for social and political commentary, with symbolism acting as a powerful form of protest. This particular painting of Picasso's Guernica was created in response to the bombing of a Basque town during the Spanish Civil War. And this is a haunting example. If you will notice, and let's get up close a little bit. The disjointed forms, for one thing. And they are disjointed. Stark black and white patterns in contrast. Symbolize the chaos and the destruction, the tearing apart of war, what it does. The bull and the horse motifs, the animal motifs. Throughout this painting, evoke themes of animalistic brutality and human suffering. We also have symbolism that's contemporary. We get new expressions of old ideas. And an artist that was absolutely famous for doing this was Frida Kahlo. And her self-portraits, sometimes just Google that. Google Frida Kahlo's self-portraits and take a look some night. Maybe tonight when the water is coming down, take a look at it. She employed symbolism in a very innovative way, and she adapted it to her own visions and the context of what she was living in. And a lot of contemporary artists are doing that now. In her self-portraits, her personal signature symbols were her uni eyebrows or unibrow and her traditional Mexican attire. And that became her symbol, her representation of identity, and not only identity, but the representation of her culture and her unapologetic self-expression. And one of my favorites, we're going to spend some time with this one, are allegorical symbols. And they are used today as well, but you have to know, and you have to kind of know what you're looking at. Some objects of art are straightforward, meaning they generally serve as a direct representation of the artist's message or its intention. It may be a beautiful landscape. It may be a household scene from old times or a battlefield scene with many touching elements. However, in many situations, the visual images painted on the canvas are only a part, just a small part, of the artist's bigger idea. And these are referred to as allegorical paintings. The meaning of allegory is the object's ability to render a deeper philosophical or spiritual message with the help of various mediums, like text or visual arts. Allegorical meanings give paintings immense power to illustrate complex ideas and concepts through seemingly simple static images or characters or compositions. And many artists such as Van Gogh, Caravaggio, Titian are known for their symbolism in their works. So how does one decipher the meaning of an allegorical art to capture the author's deeper messages and increase the artistic value? First of all, in Getty suggests that you should study the facial expressions. Let's see if we can pull up. The color palette that the painter used for the scene. and look for minor elements that seem to offer additional interpretations. It also makes sense to pay attention to how elements are arranged on the canvas. And look for repeated patterns. And contextual clues are a deeper understanding of a social, cultural, political, and historical context in which the painter created these. Having said this, let's take a closer look at The Alchemist. This is an absolute marvelous example of allegorical art. And you can find it in Peter Bruegel's This. This was created in 1600. It's a narrative scene that explores the theme of greed with many allegorical elements. The relentlessly working middle-aged man trying to find the recipe for turning regular metals into gold. His wife with an empty purse, without money for making ends meet. And an abandoned group of children playing in the background all tell a very unfortunate story of a foolish pursuit of wealth through alchemy. A closer look at the painting also shows a prophetic painting hanging on the wall. Let's see if I can find that. Maybe over here. Of the alchemist's house. The destitute family is doomed to begging for charity at the threshold of the church and going to live in a poorhouse because of losing everything. Thus, allegorical art is a powerful medium for the painter's dialogue with their audiences across generations. We get it. We get it in this day and age by understanding just those symbols right there. And it possibly we could transform this into today, just change their clothing, and it would still be a powerful, powerful painting. By decoding multiple layers of meaning in figurative art, you embark on an exciting discovery of unique messages. And the next one that I am going to show you this was done in about the same time that this painting was done, and it is by Hieronymus Bosch, The Garden of Earthly Delights. This is also an allegorical painting. And I'm going to let you just kind of look at it just a minute, okay? Now think about this being done in the Middle Ages. This is a triptych, and I don't know if you understand what a triptych is, but back in the ages, triptych means three. They were painted in three different panels. And when you close these panels on this particular one, and I just read this last night, and this is just fascinating to me. On this particular painting, when you close the panels, it's an egg. When you open it, what do you focus on? The egg. This is a rich tapestry of symbolism that depicts the journey of humanity from the innocence of Eden, which is the left panel, to the consequences of sin. The left panel, excuse me, it's hard to see. The left panel portrays the creation of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden with all these fanciful animals around it. Oh, look what he does. He was just marvelous. The center panel presents a surreal and fantastical landscape filled with bizarre creatures, extravagant scenes of pleasure. These people are having a fun time, y'all. Look at this. All of these pleasures going on. It's filled with extravagant scenes and intricate And you could spend months looking, and people have, looking at the symbolism in this particular painting. And then the final one, the final painting in the triptych, reveals a hellish landscape representing the consequences of indulging in sin. The painting's intricate details and fantastical elements serve as a symbols of moral and religious allegory, inviting viewers to reflect on the complexities of human nature, desire, and the consequences of our actions. And in the Middle Ages, that's exactly what they used. They used symbols and pictures because people were mostly illiterate, could not read. And they used these symbols to teach, to show, and to scare the Jesus out of people as well, to be better people. The American Gothic, Grant Wood. This particular one presents a farmer and his daughter standing solemnly in front of their rural home. This painting has become an enduring symbol of American identity and the heartland values of hard work, resilience, and stoicism. The farmer's pitchfork and the stern expression on the subject's faces symbolize the strong work ethic and determination associated with rural life. The Gothic styled window in the back behind can be seen as a symbol of tradition and the connection between past and present. While the painting symbolism has been subject to various interpretation, it continues to spark discussions about the complexities of rural life, which, as we all know, is the American dream, and the values that shape really our identity as a nation. Does this particular painting and the symbols that it represents calls that discussion of, and it sparks that discussion about the differences and do we want to go back to that way of life and what it looked like, and those were the good old days, and now we're in this urban existence. So this painting really sparks that. When this was done in the 1930s, it was probably one of the most challenging decades in global history, between the toll taken on humanity and then I'm sorry, and after, in the aftermath, and the ongoing political upheavals of the World War I and the Great Depression that arrived. And it created a space for artists to use the space of their art to reflect on these struggles and use these symbols. Grant Wood accepted the challenge and he painted this American Gothic. And it's the traditional farming family as they stand in front of their homestead. On the one hand, it recalls his fascination with the small town nature of his upbringing in Iowa, and it seems to celebrate rural pastoral lifestyle, and might have reminded Americans as they looked at this painting after World War I, and then the ability for Americans to pull themselves out of hard times with hard work, the old-fashioned way. However, at the same time, Wood is challenging us by offering not reality, but its facade. Using his dentist and his sister as his sitters for his portrait, Wood carefully costumed both in a combination of elements, and we're talking about symbols here too as well, that clash from a socio-economic perspective. The farmer's crisp suit coat, for instance, is out of character, really, for a man working in the fields, and alluded to his dusty overall, if you notice beneath, and the pitchfork in his hand. Meanwhile, his daughter's neat black dress and her striking cameo brooch stand counter to the apron she wears, suggesting a day of domestic work ahead. With these secret elements and symbols in mind, Wood's painting becomes a commentary on contemporary culture and perhaps even a reaction against contemporary painting, as he was known to skew some of the time towards abstraction that was gaining popularity in Europe at the time. Lots going on in that painting. Okay, if you're not dead by now and tired, we cannot leave a discussion of symbols without discussing religious symbols. And especially for those of you that travel to Europe and you go to large museums within the United States, the Met, and as we're going to soon, the Philadelphia Art Museum, the Barnes, religious symbols permeate throughout really basically all art when you see it. And if you have an understanding of some of the symbols that are presented, you will begin to form a little bit more understanding of what that artist, as I said at the beginning, was trying to portray. So let's look, and I'm going to kind of breeze through some of these, but they're very important to understand. And especially as we in the cathedral sit every morning, Sunday morning, in that beautiful art gallery that we call the cathedral. As you look around the stained paintings, or if you look at some of the architectural designs, the fabric, you're going to feel it more if you understand what some of these symbols mean and why they were perhaps placed in those stained glass windows, which, by the way, is going to be one of our big Art at Noon, is the discussion of stained glass windows and the makers. Let's start with the Good Shepherd. It's one of the earliest Christian symbols in Western art and architecture. As you can see, the shepherd symbolized Christ the Savior. The shepherd represents Jesus, who will search devotedly for us, even if we're lost. The lamb is a symbol of Christ as the Paschal lamb. Even the grapevine, and I do not believe one of these has a grapevine. I tried to put one. The fish is the oldest and most important symbol of Christ as well. But the Good Shepherd are mainly what was interesting is that the Good Shepherd was found in the catacombs. IHS, you will see that a lot. That is the first three letters of the Greek name for Jesus. The key. The key doesn't have a single simple meaning. The meaning changes based, and this is very interesting about this symbol, based on the era, the country, and even the painter. From earliest periods of Christian history, the church fathers realized the value of religious images in helping to keep sinners on the road to salvation. The church commissioned artisans and craftspeople to create religious imagery for churches and state buildings. And these sacred images acted as a moral instruction and a spiritual comfort to illiterate peasants. They served as a constant reminder of heavenly rewards that awaited honest and righteous people. Alternately, they also served as a warning, as we saw with Bosch, of hellish torture that awakened backsliders and sinners if they stayed if they strayed from God's word. Crossed keys represent Peter's confession and our Lord's reward for him. Keys that were near a bowl of fruit or a cup could symbolize corruption. A key in a lock could symbolize the acceptance of Jesus Christ. A bird with a key, and sometimes you'll see that in early Renaissance paintings, had several meanings, but most of all, it symbolized salvation. A figure holding a key, as in this picture, St. Peter is often depicted as holding a key or keys, and they signify holy, divine, a sacred person, and the authority of the papacy. And the church's power. Think about this symbol, the church's power to admit people into heaven. Wheat. There is a symbolic meaning of wheat. It's the symbol of resurrection, the cycle of seasons. It's also a symbol of self-sacrifice, for penitence and modesty, and the harvest and fertility. And this is Van Gogh's famous painting of a wheat field with birds flying over it. A bird, usually a crow or a vulture with a sheaf of wheat in its beak, denotes a lot of times Satan's watchfulness for the easily corrupted. It's often associated when you see that with a crow or a vulture. If they are in a holding the wheat in their mouth, it's usually a symbol of alcoholism or perhaps adultery. And for those of you that are Van Gogh, like Van Gogh's painting, from just talking about wheat now, and as you're looking at this picture and talking about the symbolism of the birds and knowing his background, perhaps you're looking at this particular picture of his painting of his with a different eye, a different view. I know I am. Once I started absolutely looking at the birds flying over the wheat field, the movement, the color rushing, everything is going up to the blue skies, which is heavenly. It gives you a different perspective, just knowing one or two little symbols to make it come perhaps a little bit more alive to you. The color blue has always symbolized purity. A white lily is a flower that's been an emblem for the Virgin. The rose was a flower which was used as a mother of God. The color white, especially in this particular one, the Virgin Child surrounded by white, is an emblem of incarnation, purity. If you notice, though, blue is always identified, and this is really blue, and it doesn't show up with Mary. Pink sometimes too is associated with her. The anchor. This is one of the earliest Christian symbols, and it's found in the catacombs. And it has quite a lot of different symbols in Christian art. It can refer to hope in Jesus as a sign of sanctuary, commitment, faithfulness, shelter. It is also in Saint Clement of Rome, was the fourth bishop of Rome, and he was martyred just 100 years after the death of Christ by being tossed into a stormy sea with an anchor tied around his neck. And so it's become his unusual symbol of art. It was also used as a hidden form of the cross inscribed on the walls in the burial chambers too. And it symbolizes Christian salvation as Christ and the arrival of a soul in the harbor of everlasting night. It's also a symbol of the believer to the Christian faith and the Word of God. Now, look at these. These are in the catacombs. These are the earliest Christian paintings that we have. And already the Christians were using these symbols that were universal. It was a universal language. So whether you're from all over understood what that symbol of the anchor meant, and the fish as well. Now we get to the holy apostles, and each one of the holy apostles has their own symbol. Peter, as we've talked before, is the cross keys. The apostle Andrew had the fish on the saltine. James, the greater, was the scallop shell. That was his symbol up here, the cross and the scallop shell. Philip was the basket and the cross. Bartholomew was the Bible. Matthew, the money bags. He was the money collector. The apostle Thomas was the carpenter. You see a carpenter's scare, rocks, sometimes an arrow, a spear. James, stones and a saw. The apostle Simon was the fish on the Bible. Apostle Jude, thought to be a fisherman, what they used was a ship and a staff. And Apostle Matthias was the Bible and the scrivener. They're often shown, the apostles are often shown in paintings with open books, like and saints as well. St. Augustine, for example, was regularly depicted sitting at his desk with an open heart-shaped book, symbolic of his passion for truth, reverence for the Word of God, and the ultimate source of light and truth. The dragon, and I know this doesn't look like a dragon, but it is. The dragon was also, when you see dragons in churches, and they could be the emblem of evil, and Satan is the spiritual enemy, he's the spiritual enemy of mankind. Saint Michael and Saint George are often depicted battling and slaying a dragon, which symbolizes triumph over evil. The snake symbolizes Satan. The pitchfork and the trident sometimes are symbols of the devil. A snake in a fruit tree signifies man's fall from grace. And if a snake is just slithering across the middle of a thoroughfare road, it symbolizes a false prophet. The sacred meanings and origins and early customs surrounding Christian symbols, they just date back to early times when the average, as I said, person was illiterate and most had never laid eyes on the written word. The early Christian community relied heavily upon holy iconography and symbolic representations that were important to Christians. The chalice has long been a sacred symbol, the chalice of a variety of meanings. Consecration, it's a symbol in it was a period of holding, the Gothic art periods of a person holding. If they're holding a chalice, it signifies that they're set apart from evil, that they've turned to the Lord and are God's servants. It also points to the centrality of the Last Supper, and of course, it points to the symbol of Christ. Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now until the day that I drink it anew with you in my Father's kingdom. Of course, the cross is a very ancient symbol. It's a powerful icon, and it's ambiguous. It was used centuries before the appearance of Christ. It can be found in Egyptian and Assyrian sculptures and carvings and paintings, and there are many different explanations and legends of the original meanings of this sacred symbol. If you spend, like I've done, and because I have no life, really, no, serious. If you spend a good deal of time reading around the Holy Lands, uh, literature and art, you are sure to have many different interpretations of a cross. Often academic and scholarly sources contradict each other about this. Anna Jameson, who I read, she's the author of Sacred and Legendary Art. About the 10th century, she says the fish disappeared and the cross symbol, the fish used to be the symbol, Christ symbol, but we're not used to, it still is. The cross symbol of our redemption from the apostolic times becomes the sole and universal emblem of the Christian faith. The cross placed in the hand of a saint is usually the Latin cross, the form ascribed to the cross on which our Savior suffered. It first appeared in the Christian art in a Vatican sarcophagus, on a wood, clay, or a metal coffin. And to early Christians, it's clear that the cross symbolized the manner of death that Christ and his sufferings symbolized, and a symbol of his sacrifice. The Latin, of course, inverted cross represents the martyrdom of St. Paul, because I believe it was St. Peter, I'm sorry, St. Peter, because he did not feel like he was worthy to be crucified in the same kind of manner as Jesus Christ. Architecture also has symbols, open doors, divine entrance, closed doors. An archway is a symbol to eternal life, and this is just a magnificent. hidden symbolic meaning of books. From the earliest period of history, the clergy realized the value of images in keeping those sinners on the road to heaven. They used these signs to secretly identify one another. The church, as I said, commissioned people to utilize these symbols so that people would have that universal knowledge of what that painting meant. An open book signified a lot of times education, knowledge, and wisdom. An open heart-shaped book, as we said before with St. Augustine, meant his passion for truth. A closed book symbolized incomplete knowledge, and it may also indicate the presence of heretics and the rejection. If you see a book, an open book with pages torn out, that symbolizes a rejection of knowledge. If you see a book in some of the Renaissance paintings with coins on top, it could be philanthropy. An old man with a beard holding a book or scroll usually represented one of the apostles, St. Peter, St. Matthew, or John. And let's not forget the details of saints. Western art paintings of saints are numerous and they're very important. It's easy to identify the saints if you know their emblems. And the emblem was a symbol of their life or their martyrdom. Saint Catherine of Alexandria is always depicted with a wheel. Saint Christopher is always walking or standing in water. Saint Francis is often depicted with a wolf. And as we see this one, this is Saint Anthony, and he's often depicted with pigs. Birds in Western painting, huge symbol. A peacock, a playful finch, a scheming vulture, a clever crow, a robin, an osprey, they're all charming, decorative to the average viewer. But for the painters, birds were a part of a rich visual symbolism. And this is a beautiful example of symbolism that I'm going to share with you. This is a Russian painting, and at the top we can see Christ pouring the blood that comes from his side into a chalice on top of a hill that symbolizes Calvary. In the lower part of the painting, we see instruments of the Passion, the cross, the lance that pierced his side, and a lance with a sponge that was dipped in vinegar and gall. In the foreground, and this is where the bird comes in, and I love this. In the foreground, we see a pelican ripping chunks of flesh from itself and feeding it to its chicks. This use or this parallelism illustrates the way the pelican feeds his own body and blood to his loved ones in the same way that Christ feeds himself to us he loves dearly. There's a hidden symbol of birds in this painting. The finch symbolized a winged soul returning to heaven. Because goldfinches eat thistles, they symbolize the passion of Christ. Raphael has a painting of Jesus stroking a goldfinch, representing his acceptance of his passion. The apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The four evangelists are a part of this rich and very old tradition. And I was talking to Catherine before we started this. This is what you're looking at right now is something, if you just know these four little symbols right here that's on this page, as you look at ancient architecture of old churches, as you go through and in museums and look at religious paintings, you're going to run across these four symbols. I would be surprised if you didn't, of the apostles. Saint Matthew. Saint Matthew is shown as the winged man. He was given a creature in human likeness because he commences or he begins his gospel. These are the guys that wrote the gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, with the human generation of Christ. And because in his writings, the human nature of our Lord is more dwelt upon than the divine. So it makes sense, doesn't it? Saint Mark is the winged lion. He's over here. This is the winged lion. And he symbolizes the resurrection. The lion was a symbol of St. Mark, who opens his gospel with the mission of John the Baptist, the voice of one crying in the wilderness. He also sets forth the royal dignity of Christ and dwells upon his power manifested in the resurrection from the dead. The lion was accepted in early times as a symbol of a resurrection. You're going to see the lion in lots of Renaissance paintings if you look for him, because a young lion was believed always to be born dead, but was awakened to the vitality by the breath, the tongue, and the roaring of his sire. Beginning to make a little bit sense now? St. Luke was the ox, the winged ox passion. The form of the ox, the beast of sacrifice, fitly sets forth the sacred office and also dwells on the atonement by blood, on which in his gospel he particularly dwells upon. And last was St. John, the eagle, the ascension. The eagle was allocated or allotted to John because as the eagle soars towards heaven, he soared in spirit upwards to the heaven of heavens to bring back to earth revelation of sublime and awful mysteries. Now that you know this, let's pretend that you're going to, and I forget where this painting is, but I'll look it up for you if you want to know. That you're walking through, say, the museum, the Met, and you come upon this painting. It's all by itself, and you're all by yourself, and you're looking at this painting, this next painting, trying to decipher a little bit about what this painting means. Let's take a look at this and see if you can come up. I'm just going to let you look at it for a few minutes. Remember the symbols here. This is Matthew, the winged human. This is Mark. He's giving the word, and the beast. He introduced us really to John the Baptist in the wilderness. Luke, the ox, with the book in his hand, opening up, revealing. John soaring to heaven. Perhaps this is Matthew, Luke, the ox, Mark. And notice how here's the eagle right up here. See the eagle? And notice how this artist has framed this. Perhaps they're talking to this man, and maybe it's a prophet, maybe it's someone, and they're discussing this open book. Remember, we've talked about the open book and the meaning of an open book. Maybe they're giving revelation. They're definitely in discussion, and they're definitely thinking. And these are the writers of the four gospels. Okay, let's breathe. Just a minute. Take a look at a good old Far Side comment. And now we're going to swiftly come toward the end of I know y'all this has been a lot of information, but I want to give it to you, and we want to put it on the web so that if you ever want to go back, if you're going on a trip or something, that you say, gee, we're going to go to Philadelphia, or we're going to go to Chicago, or we're going to go to the Louvre, or all these wonderful museums that house all these glorious paintings. And I know I want to put something in my toolkit. I'll just take a little review. This will give you a little review. These are, and I thought I'd kind of put everything into context toward the end. Take a breath a minute. And these are probably 10 of the most common symbols in still life paintings and what they mean. And you will see a buku of still life paintings. And I have been in so many museums and heard people say, what does that mean? It's just a pretty painting of fruit. Well, there's more to a still life painting. And if you want to understand a term, veritas, Veritas, look that up. So that's going to be on your test, okay? No, just kidding. Okay. This particular one that comes up is a fruit bowl with flowers. And this was in the last half, probably the last late 1600s. And fruits are some of the most ubiquitous subjects. If you go to Comer, you'll see a lot of still lifes. If you wander around, I think we have several wonderful still lifes over the centuries. So not only do all of these fruits offer a variety of colors, it also give and textures to utilize, but they also had a glorious time in Christian symbols, for example. Apples signify truth and knowledge in reference to the Old Testament account of Eve eating the forbidden grapes, symbolized the themes of pleasure and lust associated with the Bacchus and the Roman god of wine, and pomegranates are associated. I think these were the apples and these perhaps were the pomegranates. I'm sorry. Pomegranates are associated with Persephone, the Greek goddess of spring in the underworld. So, and there's also, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, remember this one because there's also an insect right here. And you also see holes coming in this. You also see a shell here, which we will discuss later on, the opening of the shell. And you also see flowers that are not in that beautiful bud, but are laying on aside. So if you remember these things and you look, he's just not talking about, oh my gosh, this is a beautiful, I'll arrange these flowers and put it on the wall so that my mother can remember what her arrangement looked like. There's a lot more going on here maybe the frailty of life, maybe something to do with the grapes and insects, eating on them, a wilted flower. This is Caravaggio, and his still life paintings just depicted an ordinary basket of fruit, which is thrust dramatically in the foreground. It's right there in our face with extreme realism. And take a look at the realism. If you look at it closely, it reveals that some of the fruit is rotting and being eaten by worms. So perhaps the artist's feeling about the Protestant Reformation and the Catholic Counter-Reformation in Italy had something to do with the creation of this and what can happen in life. So once again, just looking at a bowl of fruit, there's a lot more going on in still life paintings. And if you look for the symbols, you'll probably be able to recognize them. The certain of mortality. This is by Paul Cézanne, and skulls were definitely used for mortality. And such a symbol is called memento mori, which means remember that you will die. And Paul Cézanne experimented with shape and color and perspective in still life paintings. And then he started incorporating skulls into his compositions during the last decade of his life. Perhaps, perhaps he was realizing an increasing awareness of his own mortality. And in this example, you have the contrast between a lifeless skull and the arrangement of a very vibrant, ripe fruits. And it's kind of distinct and it's extremely haunting. This is Still Life with the Bible by Van Gogh. And it's another common component of the Vanitas still life paintings. The candles represent the inevitability of the passing of time. The longer they burn, the smaller they get, till there's nothing left. A lit candle symbolizes light, truth, knowledge. An extinguished candle symbolizes loss and death. In Christianity, A brightly burning candle indicates faith in God or the light of Christ. Oil lamps or other recognizable sources of light are sometimes used in still life paintings to convey the same meanings. Van Gogh painted this shortly after his father died, and his father was a Protestant minister, and it depicts an extinguished candle, a Bible that belonged to his father, and a modern secular book. Alongside these two juxtaposed books, the candle might allude to the fact that Van Gogh had tried and failed, which he did, to become a minister like his father, or it just simply may refer to his impending death. Once again, flowers can be symbols of life, and they can be symbols of growth. Beautiful rose, a white lily. They can signify life, faith, growth, power. Wilting flowers, on the other hand, serve as a grim reminder that life, material goods, beauty, fragile. Specific flowers also have more specific meanings. Poisonous nightshade symbolizes danger. Daisies symbolize innocence. Poppies symbolize deep sleep or death. A red rose, love, seduction. In the context, though, of Christianity, a red rose does also represent the atoning blood shed by Jesus Christ. Seashells, as we talked about, symbolize birth, purity, and fertility. This is a really good still life by Clara Peters. And this is a woman in the 17th century that did this. It's in addition to be associated with femininity, seashells also can symbolize birth, good fortune, baptism, resurrection. Scallop shells are specifically associated with St. James, one of the 12 apostles. Oysters are very popular, extremely popular in still life. And they were not considered a luxury food at the time. Like other shells, they also symbolize birth and fertility. You know, she has in the foreground, a lot of the banquet spreads that you will see in the 17th century. Viewers of such paintings could delight in the deliciousness of the feast and ponder on the moral or religious messages that each menu item symbolizes, which are produced. Oysters are symbols of purity and perfection. When hidden between the oyster shells, the pearl represents knowledge and awareness. Mirrors. We saw mirrors used in that first painting I showed you with Van Eyck's painting. And here's O'Roy Lichtenstein in 1972, this still life with mirrors. He explores a centuries-old tradition in this painting. Now, this is 20th century work now. We're getting still into symbols using pop art culture, contemporary culture. This is a still life painting, as you can see, like the one before. Only it's pop. It's included a mirror and a basket of fruit that are traditional symbols that viewers are invited to consider the contemporary context of mass media and pop culture. So another still life, but a very different look at it. Insects. Insects, transformation and decay. We just saw an insect eating away on that piece of grape over here. This is the fruits, flowers, fruit shells, and insects. And insects look for them because they're often integrated into still life paintings. There's tiny insects appear throughout this composition. And you may think, oh, that's what happens, if it's outside, if this was outside, insects would naturally be there. But actually, it is very deliberate. The painter deliberately placed them in here because insects draws attention to decay of the fruit and the flowers due to infestation, and it's already underway. So perhaps he's saying the decay and death is further emphasized by the overturned basket. And then the dragonfly, if you can see, it's hard to see, but he's right here. The dragonfly is ominously hovering over the scene. So, musical instruments. I know you think, if y'all, those of you that have lasted this far, we're going to give you, maybe we'll give you a treat of some sort. I don't know what it is, because you really want to understand and know what's going on and with the symbols of art. God bless you. Musical instruments, their beauty and transience. This is one of the ones that another setting of musical instruments by the mandolin and the guitar by Pablo Picasso. They were considered luxury items for centuries. They were often included, and you will see these in still life paintings, the lute a lot of times, to show the wealth. They show the talent of the patron. They also carried a deeper meaning. In general, music represents leisure or celebration. In a vanitas still life painting, a violin can remind viewers of the threads of time and the fact that all beautiful things must come to an end. Violin strings that are snapped or missing can indicate a discord or death. Flutes have long been associated with intoxication of Bacchus, as well as the sins of lust and laziness. The curving instruments, such as a guitar, parallel the organic and the seductive shapes of, guess what? The human body. This is a Cubist mandolin and guitar by Picasso. Ignores most of the conventions of all of the still life paintings that we just looked at. However, it is still worth considering the symbolism behind the stringed instruments. They may represent the noise of modern life or the transience of the rapidly evolving world of 20th century art. And we could not look at symbolisms when not talking about dead animals, all right? The one that we're fixing to look at is called Still Life with Game, Vegetables, and Fruit. And it was a 17th century still life production. Still life was big in the 17th century. This one is, it's the fact, this is during the Dutch Golden Age, hunting for a sport became less exclusive to the wealthy, and the international trade became more abundant. As a result, still life paintings of highly detailed hunting trophies, exotic animal carcasses were in very high demand and fit in with other. When depicted alongside other food items, dead animals could also represent culinary specialties of a certain region or a patron even. The arrangement of food by one uses dead game to showcase humanity's conflicting proclivities for the macabre and the beautiful. Such paintings may also represent pleasure and satisfaction of the hunt, the allure of getting goods, or a tenuous relationship, which I think, between humans and nature. Silver and gold, luxury and still life paintings, and you will see a lot of this. A silver mirror can be reflective of a person's soul. This has so much symbols in it. We could go on forever with this one. This is precious metals may showcase an artist's skill at accurately deflecting and reflecting the texture. Or this could be a collection of the patron's objects. Gold is something that's precious and sacred. Silver can be reflective of a person's soul. Gold and silver objects in still life paintings may also have a nationalistic significance. We can't leave without talking about a couple of things. This is Lucas Cranach the Elder. This is a 15th century painting, but really it's probably around 16th century, early 16th century. Language was not transcendental enough to complete the meaning of a revelation. Symbols relied on heavenly teaching and familiar images chosen from the known. And the Bible does not, as we know, narrate kindly about the snake. And as you look at this picture, you can see on the faces of the people, this is early. This is early symbolic. Here it is. The snake is there. I gotcha. The apple is in the hands. The acceptance of Adam, yes, look on his face, the smile, the Mona Lisa smile on Eve's face, the closeness together, all of the elements of art are here in this particular picture, the light, the darkness, the contrast, and it's loaded with the symbolisms of the lion stalking in the darkness. Now, I want to open, if there's anybody still out there, I want you all to look at this one. Can you, from what we have discussed so far, let's just open it up. What does this show us? This is the old man and the guitar. Any symbol, anything? How can you view this particular painting now? Anybody just jump in?
Is he dying?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
The color, the contrast between the vivid color of the guitar and the skull-like image of his face, or very emaciated body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like he's playing his last song.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And
the tear in his
Blush tone.
the tear in his clothing
Mhm.
looks like he's
Yeah.
been there for a while.
Mm-hmm. What do you notice in the colors that they used?
Blues.
Picasso used.
A lot of blue, yeah.
Yeah.
Would
The
you?
the paleness, the white. He's on his way out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also it might be with the colors, the yellow tones of part of him, that one hand, the upper hand with the white, that it kind of says there's life and death and everything. You know, that both elements are there
Mm-hmm.
with the use of that color.
Right, and the musical instrument, as you said before, representing wealth. There's different kinds of wealth, so it might be the wealth of being alive, and he's playing, and as Dee mentioned, the hand on the frets is yellow. Life in music, expressing maybe a sorrow of his passing life. He looks pretty sad.
Yeah.
And the guitar itself is very straight and very perfect. It's not curved and it's young. It's a young guitar. It's smaller.
That's a good point, because to me everything's elongated in this. You know what I mean? It's and the way he's sitting, and the turning of his head. If he had painted the guitar black, or say gray or white, even, would it have changed the look of this painting? Would it have changed the feeling for a different color if he'd used a different color for the guitar? Yeah, what do y'all think?
Yes, it would have. Absolutely.
All right, let's take a look at another one. Everybody stay alert. This is something that this is a symbol that we can all address, all of us, as a part of our country. It's the flag. And this is artist Jasper Johns did this one, and I'm going to show you another one he did in just a minute. He and you you probably get to see some of his exhibits. I have seen one of his flag exhibits, and they are just up north. I think there's a museum that holds his artwork, and they are phenomenal pieces, and they're all of the flag, all of the flag. This one is look what he's done. It's a three-dimensional one. This is just your overview to it, but this is the one I want you to really look at. Look at this one. Tell me what you see here.
Struggles.
What?
The fraying of the colors, sort of,
Mhm.
the disintegration,
Absolutely.
blurring.
Mhm. Right in through here.
Mhm.
Tatters.
Mm-hmm.
Struggles.
Yep. The alternate red and white in our flag, the 13 stars, the white of it, it's the stripes, of course, we know represent the 13 colonies, the stars, the 50 states. The color of the flag symbolizes red, symbolizes hardiness and valor. White symbolizes purity and innocence, and blue represents blue represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice. Do you think that's any of that is represented here?
No.
It is,
Struggling.
but it's falling apart. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's represented, but it's not steady.
There you go.
Picture that flickers in and out.
Mhm.
That's a good point. Yeah, it really does.
And there's also some birds and insects in there.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what strikes me of this, and I'd love to see this one, is now I put it on a kind of a black background just so that y'all could see it. But I'm wondering what it really looks like in the raw, when you see it, if the colors are because the black makes these colors stand out, just so that y'all get an idea. So I'm kind of wondering what the colors represent, because those are pretty violent. That red bleeds, it's a bleeding red. You know what I'm saying? It's that vibrant. The up here, the blue background for the stars, I mean, they really, simmer and shimmer. So I'm really interested to see what it is. Okay, my friends, last cartoon. Thank you for hanging in here with me. But this, I made this really, really fat. Normally I don't, because I knew we would probably go long, but I did it for several reasons. One, for our art walk friends that we go on these wonderful art walks. This is going to give us another vocabulary to put in our toolkit. And also for our art walk people that are headed to Philadelphia, we are definitely going to be exposed and to such great stuff that by having these little tiny bits of tools, I think it'll make you appreciate your trip just a little bit better. So having said that, I am grateful that you tuned in today, and I wish you all safety for this weather that we're having. And the next Art at Noon that I'm working on is going to be stained glass. We're going to, Marc Chagall happens to be one of my favorite all time, and we haven't done Chagall. So we're going to kind of, and he was an extremely wonderful stained glass artist. And we're going to kind of center our time together around his artwork, but also hopefully segue into the stained glass work that is in our church in the cathedral. So that's coming up, and I do not know when that's going to be because we're going to be very busy in the next couple of months. It probably will be around, I would imagine, perhaps in December after Christmas is what I'm thinking. Because like I said, we're getting ready for that art walk, and that's a biggie. So thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Sandy.
Thank
That
you.
was
Sandy.
fabulous.
Yes,
Thank you, Sandy.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you, Sandy.
You're welcome.